Hello everybody. Hello, people are coming in already. Hello everyone. Welcome to the latest Meet the Dons Trust board session tonight, hosted by Charlie and Niall. I'm just here to waffle while people come in, and I can see they are coming in. So welcome everyone who's joined us, all you early joiners who or we're possibly a couple of minutes late. So just a few house rules I'll talk you through while we wait for the rest to join us. If you haven't been to one of these before, thank you to everyone who has asked questions in advance, sent them over. We're going to try and answer them over the course of the next hour or so. You can ask questions as we go. If there's something you think you want to follow up or so forth, there is a Q&A box, and there's an icon at the bottom of your screen. Click on that, brings up a box. That's for asking questions of Niall and Charlie as we go. There's also a chat box where people can chat to each other or themselves, but please just use the Q&A box for asking questions, otherwise it does get congested and we might miss some. We'll try and answer as many as we can over the course of the hour, as well as I say, the advanced questions. There's going to be live polls as well tonight. It's a bit of a novelty. We'll see if that works. We might have a couple of exclusives or not, and there'll be lots of updates from around the club. There's quite a lot going on around the club and behind the scenes at the moment, with reviews and here and there, so no doubt we'll hear a bit more about those from Niall and Charlie. Couple of house rules, please. No swearing, because my mum does watch this. As I said, there's a third one has just joined us. There is a chat box. There's an icon at the bottom. If you want to chat, click on that, talk to each other. We'll be monitoring the Q&A box. There's the icon at the bottom, and that's where you send us your questions as we go. As I said, we'll try and get through as many as we can over the next hour. If you missed the Meet the Academy event hosted by Michael Hamilton on the 15th of February, that's now available on YouTube. There's a link on Pro Boards. We will be recording this, so you're here. But if you wanted to watch it again because you enjoy it that much, we will be sharing a link again on Pro Boards to members in the first instance, and putting it on YouTube and making an audio edition available as well. So I can see we've got quite a few people in here. So just to say thanks to George Jones and Hannah Kitcher and Gary Jordan, who you can't see, who have helped us get all this together with managing technology and so forth. And I think we've got most people in. So just finally, if you want to ask questions as we go along, Q&A icon at the bottom, tap on there, ask a question, ask away, and we'll try and do as much as we can over the next hour. So I think that's everything. Right, so thanks for joining us, and over to you, Niall and Charlie.
Thanks, Graham. Evening, everyone. Evening, Niall.
Evening, Charlie. Evening, everybody.
Again, yeah, not too bad, not too bad. So we have we've been sent, I'd say, about 5 or 6 questions in advance that we'll go through. Obviously, Niall and I have now been on the board for 2 months.
Several years, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. It does feel like longer, so we can fill in a bit on what we've been doing. It's been a slightly hectic couple of months, as you're probably aware. We do have the ability to run some polls and get some other thoughts, so we thought, just to make sure that everyone is genuinely there and we're not being populated by bots, we thought we'd run a poll to see what people thought of last night's game. Start with a bit of good news. So George, I think, has a poll ready to get your opinion on last night's game. There you go. Who was your man of the match from last night? I don't know how close this vote's going to be, but we'll find out. Oh, hosts and panelists can't vote, Niall. Well,
I've been clicking at that.
Yeah, don't want to try to sway the electorate too far, but who would you have voted for, Niall?
Jack.
Really? Would you? Yeah. I mean, I thought Darnell had an absolutely great game though, coming in at right back. But yeah, I would have voted Jack.
Best creative player we've had for absolutely ages, yeah. And you know, I'm used to 89th minute goals going against us this season, so it's like absolutely glorious. The problem I've got is that my streaming was a little bit behind everybody else's, and I'm on WhatsApp, so my phone was going. And if Luke McKenzie's there, I could swear a lot, but it was quite nice when he goes yes, and I'm like, we're not even in their half, and he's gone yes. So I have no idea what was going to happen. Luckily, it was Jack Rodino, and therefore happy world.
Yeah,
thank you, Luke.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it was. And the winner is Jack Rodoni, although Darnell Johnson not far behind. So yeah, there you go. Thanks for your input. I hope everyone enjoyed that last night, however far behind your streams were. Speaking of iFollow, actually, I'll leap into this one at this point. It's already come up in the Q&A. Les Barron says, I did ask Charlie if he knew the usual iFollow attendance on matches. He said he would find out. Yeah, the EFL have sent out some data on this. It's unbelievably hard to understand with the world's worst. We got given this at the last Untrust board meeting with the world's worst fields put in the Excel file. It's quite hard to unpick between people who've bought it and people who got given it as part of their season tickets. And then they've split home and away. And basically, we all looked at the last board meeting and none of us could make head or tail of it. I've asked for more info on it and we'd like to look into it further. It looked like about 300 per game if you take out one-offs like the Donny game as people who bought in, excluding the people who got it as season tickets. It would seem it's a bit lower than some other clubs. It's lower than, I mean, obviously it's lower than, sort of clubs with bigger followings, but it would seem like it could ideally, hopefully be a bit higher. It's something we'd like to look at. It's also probably a good space to mention that we've also, I personally, or the board in general, but I personally been looking at what else we can try and do. There are more things we can do without having to break or have issues around the iFollow contract. I mean, Charlton have done a load of great stuff this season. My personal bugbear, because I produce events for a living as a day job, is the lack of multi-camera stuff. And there are ways of solving that. People may have noticed Portsmouth had 4 cameras. So there are ways of doing that. So we've been looking at running some things on that. We actually ran some tests and so we've been looking at some other digital things we can hopefully do, particularly at home games. We actually ran some tests on some stuff for that last night. So I hope we could augment that, but it looks like the numbers at the moment are about 300, but in isolation, that's not a very meaningful number. So hopefully we'll come back with some more info on that one. I agree with Ian, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I think technically it's been absolutely fine. It's robust and it doesn't fall over. It would just be nice to try and augment it with, some slightly more interesting content from within the ground. So glad you thought that about the game. What do you think we might start with, Niall? Should we start with a quick manager coach update?
Yeah, go for it, Charlie, and then we can have a look at some of those other questions that have come through already. So start with the manager update.
Yeah.
I'm sure people will be interested. So
yeah.
Over to you, Charlie, for that.
So yes, sorry, me talking again. We'll hand over to Niall in a minute. Obviously, we all know Mark's taken over as head coach. I think we just thought also that's been a fantastic, a really robust and impressive process, I'd have to say, with the view from being on the trust board. Anyone who's also in the Facebook group will notice I may have bit slightly when someone suggested that the whole thing was a fake and everyone decided the day after Glyn went that they were going to give it to Robbo, and I can assure everyone that's very much not the case. And I think Robbo would like everyone to know that's not the case as well. I thought it was a fantastically robust process. There were some great candidates who came in, a really thorough interview process with very much the aim of ensuring that they benchmarked, and all run by the FCB obviously, but they really benchmarked what Robbo could do against other possible people who are out there, against each of the universe of possible people, and Robbo came through those interviews very well, as you'd all expect. Obviously, like many people at the club, I've spoken to Robbo a fair amount over the years, and I think his approach has shone through in what he's done since. And obviously, we really hope that he can really continue what he's been doing. There's been a little update this afternoon as well. So for anyone who hasn't been near the website yet, there have been some changes around the coaching staff. So just kind of updating people on that. Some people may have seen yesterday. So Justin Cochrane's been involved on the coaching staff, which again I think is an absolutely fantastic addition. So he is the current England under-17 coach. Very, very bright coach, fantastic guy. Was someone that sort of the club became aware of during this whole process. He's come on board as part of the backroom team. As Joe was explaining on the video, the view at the moment is we won't have an assistant as such, but Robbo's got a pool of coaches he can draw on to give him more support on the coaching side. He's had terrible, I forgot his name. Andy Parslow's been involved. He's particularly on the set piece coach. The performance mindset coach called Steve Salas has come in. and Bezo obviously has continued in his role, and Rob Tuvey stepped up to do more from the under-18. So there's very much a kind of pool of talent all coming in to do things, and we think, well, we back Mark's belief that will give him the backroom staff he needs in training and at matches to do well, don't we think, Niall?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's really exciting, and like Justin Cochrane is certainly a really exciting addition. He's a really bubbly character, and it's you know, he was recommended, and so I think it's a really positive step. And you know, personally, Robbo's interviews are just a complete breath of fresh air. You know, don't you think, Charlie? I mean, it's just like so nice to have somebody who's like so gets the club, who's been with us for such a long length of time, and he just lives and breathes the kind of philosophy of what we're trying to do. And I love it. You know, I think it's really, really, really positive.
Yeah,
it's great, isn't it?
I think that's true. Yeah, and also I just think he just comes across as a man who thinks really well about things and has a very clear process. And again, I think it's important to say, again, I mean, Les has put another question in saying, you won't know if you've named candidates. Can you say how many there were? I mean, there were, they whittled down from a long list of about 80, but I think that includes people who, you know, are quite good at Football Manager on their phone. But they whittled down from that list to, you know, to a short list of plausible candidates. They interviewed a significant number, and the caliber was very high. Certainly, I would say, based on from the last time around, you know, I think this time around there were a lot of people actually quite similar in the sense of maybe being more at the forefront of some of the changes in coaching and approach and the way things have happened, but some people who I think certainly Don Strasser on the panel came out and said he was convinced that all of them would have provided a good overhaul and given us a great chance of staying up and building for next season and building for the future. So I think it was a very robust process and of a very high caliber, and therefore that was exactly very impressive for a Chelsea fan. That was the kind of the background at which Mark was judged. I think it's important to say, you know, that Mark was very much judged against the pool of other people that are out there. So there wasn't a massive, as it were, boost for just going, he's here already, let's crack on and do that. Just while we're on that point, and again, I'm just going to jump through and take some of these at the same time. Alex Davis asks a very sensible question here. He says, given Robbo is an internal appointment, how do we ensure we get enough external experience, ideas, changes? Protecting our culture is important, but so is progression on the pitch after a disappointing few seasons. I wouldn't disagree with that question at all, Alex. I think you're absolutely right. I think one of the people who would agree with you most strongly on that is Robbo. I think he, so far in what he's done with the academy, but even what he's done in the last 3 weeks, suggests he's very much open to that and indeed would welcome it. I think he's someone who checks his ego at the door in terms of if there are people who can come in and help, he would bring them in. As we said, we've obviously seen that Justin's been involved this week. As soon as he started, he brought in a performance mindset coach. Mark's very keen to say he's a performance mindset coach, not a psychologist. I don't personally entirely understand the difference, but they're very keen to make that distinction. But I think we would all agree we probably saw things this season where it did feel a bit like some of the issues we had this season weren't so much physical as mental. So I think the idea that he's brought someone in to address that is great. And I think we're, I'd be pretty confident that we can bring in, or will bring in, people to have that experience and idea and change and challenge. I don't see this as a setting things in stone kind of view. I mean,
I think what's good about that is also you've got his ethos about leaders on the pitch, and I think that's a really positive. You think about the kind of old way of old Wimbledon fans like myself. You want to have that passion again. You want to have those leaders, and I think that's what's going to help drive us on. So that's a bit to answer that question. I found that really such a breath of fresh air. And look, I'm not going to deny what Glyn helped us, and I think Glyn was a great bloke in lots and lots of ways. But there's a time when we've got to move on. I think we have to make that decision. And Robbo's just a different direction.
Yeah, I think that's true. I thought Glyn was fantastic with us and for us. And specifically, I'd say, having been involved in setting up the bond and running that, quite apart from his years as a player and obviously how well Glyn understood and knew us, he went absolutely above and beyond to help out in everything with that, all the way through everything we did about Plough Lane. I think I'm actually slightly too young to have seen Glyn play, or rather, to be more exact, I probably wasn't spending my early years at games as much as Niall was. So I defer to Niall on that. But yeah, he
was a great player.
he was an absolutely great player. He was, many fans my age and slightly older is their favourite ever player, and he did an absolutely great job. And what he and Wally did was fantastic. I think each time we've brought new managers in, they've all brought something in, and obviously I very much hope that when all this COVID nonsense is over, we all really hope that Glyn will feel able, to come to a game and be thanked for all the amazing stuff he did do. It's obviously always very sad and very awkward in a way at the end of the time of any manager. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that anyone on the Don's Trust board is taking that lightly at all. I think he did fantastic stuff for us, and he did even obviously even this season was the start of the season we were doing very well. It became problematic. That's far more of that on that side. That's obviously something more operation that's dealt with by the football club. But yeah, obviously Glyn left with all our thanks, and we very much hope we see him back down again. Just before we sort of move on from this bit, Peter Leng says, who will look after recruitment, given Robbo said he won't be doing that? If the football club there's a number of things they're looking at around that as to who they bring in and how that's going to work. There are plans and things that they're looking at. Nothing has been totally finalised yet, so can't be announced. But again, it's something, as you could probably tell from the interview, that Robbo is also very much on board with. So again, we hope it's an area where it should be another department that hopefully we can upgrade and develop on and create not just recruitment in the sense of who's going to play for us next season, but hopefully ongoing player pathways of either developing our own players or deepening connections to bring in who we might look to bring in on loan and how that works. So there's more to come on that, and there's definitely work happening, but that's where we've got to on that one. So that answers a couple that have come in. So we on the board we thought our priorities at the start of the year would be fourfold, really. One was just supporting the club in this phase of fitting out the stadium and the fit out stages of the stadium and finalising everything to get it ready for fans to come in. And then we ourselves have taken on three priorities of a strategy review, a structural review, and then also looking at and working with the refinancing committee, who will be looking at the financing plan over the next 5 years, and particularly the refinancing plan around the debt. So those were our kind of three core priorities. Obviously, manager recruitment became the manager process. Obviously, it was thrown up as well. So those are the kind of the three bits. So Niall was going to say a little bit about the strategy review and where that's at, and very much a lot of opportunity for people to get involved.
Yeah, cool. This has been a really, really, really busy period for that. So when we first came in, we looked, I think a lot of us who stood and got elected looked at where we can, what is the direction of the club going forward. And that was a really key element. And obviously, when you look at it, we set aims donkeys ago, and like the big aims were get back into the Football League, get back to Plough Lane, huge achievement. And that's a brilliant thing. I think every Wimbledon fan should pat themselves on the back. But it left the big void and go like, well, where do we go now? What do we do next? Rather than a bunch of 9 of us over Zoom scribble on the back of a fag packet, which would have been a very bad approach, we've taken a really strategic view of looking at how we can define what does the club mean going forward, and ultimately what is the vision of the club. And that's one thing we really set out to do. It's been a really interesting process. So we kind of set ourselves up quite quickly. We split it into 6 segments, which were football, commercial, community, one club, ambassador, and ethos. And each of those, there's 6 different leads for that, and I was one of those. And we went away and we spoke to a range of experts in those fields, a few fans, just to get an early sense of the questions we might want to look at. That was the first bit. And we're now in the second stage, and that is where we're looking at the key stakeholder groups within the club. So they are things such as BLAG, the foundation, football management, the academy, ladies and girls section, and community groups. There's going to be a massive bit coming up a bit further down the stage where we will really involve the fans. But this first bit is about making sure those questions that we've shaped are the right ones, and what kind of the general answers are from those various different groups. And we'll consolidate that and then look at doing questions and focus groups, big survey, huge survey for fans to make sure that, after all, we're a fans owned club, so that's going to be really central to how we develop that strategy. All of this has been managed brilliantly by the likes of Hannah and it's Tim, who are experts in research and how you develop strategy reviews. So it's been done in a very professional level, really thoroughly, and we're really keen to make sure people have the opportunity to constantly feed back in on it. We're hopeful that we'll get something towards the end of April, around that time, where we'll be able to present something to the fans about where we've got to. We're looking to do an interim report in the meantime to help with our refinancing process. But it's been fascinating. I've already hosted 2 sessions. We've done 2 of the 9 stakeholder group sessions, and they've been really revealing. Some really good themes. So with DLAG and the foundation, and that stressed a lot on that. What effectively trying to be the best community club in the world, which I think is an early ambition from those 2 groups, but obviously we've still got 7 more to go. So it's really good and really positive, and I think we're in a great place. And it's such an exciting bit to be involved in, and I've really enjoyed it. That's kind of where we're up to. Any questions about how that process is going to work, then anytime you can drop an email to me, or Xavier or Hannah, quite a lot of us that are involved, and we can happily feed that back. And also, get into pro boards and ask some questions there as well. We're trying to be as open, as transparent as we can do on that. But it's been fun so far. But then maybe I'm just like kind of a bit of a loopy tune and really enjoying this kind of whole strategy stuff. I don't know. It's been a lot of evening works. It's been I've been probably doing, 2 to 3 hours work on DT stuff most days. But
lightweight.
Oh, sorry, Charlie, I've let you down. I've let you all down. All those people that might have voted for me, and all those people that didn't. So I'm only doing 3 hours a day or whatever on it. It's terrible.
But there's a lot of opportunity now. So that preliminary work having happened, there'll be a lot more engagement around that. It's very much something that most of us who stood this time around and people who restood wanted to ensure there was much greater engagement on and involvement of people, a chance to shape direction rather than waiting until things might look iffy and then getting involved. So there will be more things to get involved on there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Charlie. I mean, that's the thing. It is about engagement. It is something that we, you and I both stood on as things that we really wanted to make sure happen, and really trying to make sure that we have something fresh and exciting for fans to get involved and get their teeth into, and really say, we're a unique club going in a unique direction, and we're not the same as everybody else. And I think that's really positive. Let's see where it all comes out with. For me, I'm really keen to push it forward. I was the 5th out of people getting elected, so I only got the 1-year term. So I'm kind of probably pushing at a faster rate than everybody else.
You got less burnout risk for Niall there, yeah. So we can burn Niall out in 12 months. So everything on strategy push to Niall, and be nicer to Hannah, so she can last for 4 years of this craziness.
Yeah, exactly. I'll burn out happily, and whatever. You'll see me on the trash heap in a year's time.
We could take through some of the questions we've had, and also some of the questions we've raised, which overlap. Quite a few questions about the Broncos ground share, and there were also I was also about to talk about test events and a bit of a roadmap. Sorry, I've just seen this last one come in. So there's 2 questions on the Broncos here as well. I don't know if everyone else can see them, but is there any news on the Broncos ground share? Kevin Johnson and Lauren says you're both on the comms group. So could you please communicate to us what's the current status of proposed deal with that rugby league team? Yeah, we can absolutely do both of those. Les Barron follows it by saying, will the stadium be ready to hold test events as soon as they're allowed, and will the pub be ready to open?
I think the second one's obviously the key question there, isn't it?
I've been trying to remember where it was when Charlie organised a picket line because a club were charging us more than home fans for our beer. I mean, I hate to say this, I don't remember that, but it does sound like the kind of thing, if I could remember it, I might have not been there. So where was that? I don't normally quibble about beer prices, but anyway. So let's go through kind of the Broncos bit first. I think with that, we also had a question in advance from Tim Probert, who actually, fun enough, also had the same level of priorities, which was to ask, will the club shop be ready? Could the pub be open after that date? What happened to the stadium tours? And then talking about test events and what's happening with the Broncos. So there's kind of several things at once there. Let's start first of all with the sort of the roadmap to opening. And again, this is more of an FCB area, but I did check in with Joe today and we had a chat. So if all else goes well and people are allowed in May, which obviously the key word at the moment in all of Boris's updates is not before. So obviously any of these things can shift. We are in a weird position as a club because we weren't able to hold any test events because of the time at which COVID came in. So we both have to comply with all of the COVID stuff, but we also still have to hold test events that you're required to hold when you open a new ground. So there are a couple of moving parts there. So there needs to be a limited capacity test event and then probably a bigger test event. So if you ignore COVID for a moment, if you ignore those numbers, you would look to hold a 2K event and then a 2,000 and a 4,000 event would be pretty much the idea. And then obviously after that, you then get down to kind of COVID rules for who could come in. If you extrapolate forward from that, therefore, obviously Broncos playing wouldn't happen until after that, even if a deal was done. Where we've got to with the Broncos is that there will be a fan vote very soon. The club, and I think Zav is now talking to him as well, we as a Don's Trust Board are keen to bring information to the fans on which to base that vote. So we're working out what information can be included in that to try and bring that vote to happen. Obviously, the temperature check was broadly positive. I think understandably, and obviously I would include myself in this. There were some questions about how it would work, what possible impacts would be, both negative in terms of what else would happen in the stadium and positive in terms of what could it mean for us. So we want to try and put as many parameters on that as possible for that vote to be meaningful. So that should happen fairly soon. I mean, I'm talking in the next days stroke weeks, or few days stroke next week or so. If that vote were to be positive, the planning permission process will also happen at the same time. So the Broncos would look to play some games this summer. Again, obviously, there are huge question marks over COVID. There are question marks over lots of other things there. We as a board, and again, Niall and I personally, are very much of a mind that we would like to have had some of us lot, you lot, we lot, whatever you call us, in the ground first before anyone else comes to our ground. That feels to me to be something that's really quite important. It may not be possible, obviously, to have a 9,000 event of football or indeed rugby or anything. So it might still have to be a capped event. It might therefore become one of the test events. We don't entirely know. You obviously would be beyond the end of the football season. No one's ever used the term post-season friendly before, really. I guess you had sort of Alan Cork's testimonial and so on. But we could get to a time of the year when it would be the case that essentially our squad are on their break or something else. So maybe you'd be looking more to do a kind of Legends event or something. But certainly the Don's Trust view is that we would very much for both kind of organisational and all of the reasons for fans doing it, we would very much look to try and have an event that involved Wimbledon fans being at something before any rugby game took place there. That's kind of as far as that's got. Obviously, the COVID angle means that these things have just always often move and change. So that's partly been where we're at, literally based on what Boris said on Monday. So basically, in summary, test events, yes, will happen as soon as they're allowed, which obviously can't be until early May at the earliest. Broncos wouldn't come in and play until after that if the vote were positive, and we would very much push for there to be to get as many fans in as we are allowed to around the test event rules for everyone to come and see the stadium, because we are obviously as fans as sort of bittersweet as everyone else that we've got the place built and we can't be there because that's a bit rubbish. There's no two ways about that. It's not the worst it's not the worst impact of COVID, but it's pretty rubbish. And everyone on the board is well aware, because we did it ourselves, that people all the money in to fund it, all the support, all everything else. So we'd like to try and do that. I think therefore, if you are able, well, we are able to do some kind of test event, non-full capacity thing, and then if potentially the ground is used a bit over the summer again, the plan would very much still be, as and when full crowds are allowed, to ramp that up to still having a big kind of prestige game, pre-season friendly or something else, as a kind of final celebration of it, which has all been massively delayed, and I'm sure would be a great occasion. So the Broncos bit, watch this space. That's expected to be in the next few days. Hopefully that is some outline of where the rest of that bit has got to. The other question that was hidden in that was, will the club shop be ready for the 12th of April? Answer, yes. Could the pub be open after date for outdoor consumption? Answer, not sure. Again, that's slightly an FCB thing. There are operational things going on around the pub, so we'll update on that. It has its license, it's ready to operate, but there's still things going on with the fit out and other bits. So again, slightly watch this space on that. I don't remember what game I protested about the price of beer at. I think that covered the Broncos bit. Other questions in advance we were asked about debentures. Sorry, Niall, are you happy for me to keep waffling on this? And then I'll...
No, you're happy to waffle on. I might just come back to that. I mean, I love the idea of a Masters game at some point, that bit, if we can't get, I think it has to be, my personal opinion, I think most people on the board agree, it has to be we're in first before the Broncos. If that goes ahead, I think that's just an absolute, given. That would be my strong view, and I'll be really surprised that doesn't happen. If it's not our first choice 11, then Masters is a great other alternative. Obviously it's been a frustrating year. I'm one of these people that bought a non-refundable season ticket. I'd love to have seen a game at Plough Lane. I haven't been to Plough Lane yet. Charlie's gone sneaked in a couple of times. So I'm just.
I'd like to correct the misapprehension. We don't. Someone did say this the other day. Actually, I think that's worth mentioning while we're here. That you don't. No one gets to go and sit at games because they're on the Don's Trust board. I have actually worked at a couple of games. I worked at the first game. And I'm
so hard. Sorry, Charlie.
I missed our first goal because I was, actually working on doing some other things. So I have been at games, and I am aware that even if you're there while working, it's a massive privilege, obviously. But I would say
on the 88 Cup final replays, right? I was the person who organised that previous one back in 2004 or 5. My God, my hair went grey organising that. It was an absolute night. It was a great game, a nightmare. I think we drew 1-1. Aldridge score that penalty? He did get a penalty, and he might have scored it against it. But it was Dickie Guy in goal, not Dave.
I was going to say it was still Dickie in goal. Yeah.
So it was great. We even had the proper referee from that game, from Brian Hill, who refereed it again. Yeah. It was a nightmare organising it, and God knows what they'll be like now. That was 16 years ago, so it'd be interesting to watch.
It's depressing that even the rematch was 16 years ago.
It's bad, mate. It's bad. Whatever. That's definitely a thing. I'll let you go on, Charlie, because I know there's a load of other questions we need to rattle through.
So Mark Jones asked some questions about debentures. How many were sold? We sold about 1,800. So many thanks to everyone for that. The debentures and the non-refundable season tickets made a massive difference to club finances, and as ever were yet another example of everyone standing full square behind the club. Then are we still selling them? No, apparently not. We're not, but this is something that we can now open back up again, so there is the potential probably for them to be rolled out again for anyone who didn't have a debenture, to come in behind for what will now be the start of our glorious first decade at Plough Lane, a year delayed. Any debenture holders get their 5% discount on season tickets for the duration of the 10 seasons. That was the other part of the question. And then Mark also asked, if next season is restricted attendance, how will we determine who can attend? And again, the honest answer is we haven't. I checked this with Joe. We haven't entirely gone through that priority list as yet. This year it ran. If you had a debenture and a non-refundable, you're at the top. Then it was a non-refundable only. Then it was the debenture only. And then it was everybody else. As yet, we haven't yet worked out, that's unfair. The club obviously, given the speed at which everything's working out, haven't yet worked out if they'd be doing non-refundable season tickets again, and therefore if that would be a way of being further towards the front of the queue or not. Obviously, we've only just seen numbers that suggest there's a 2K number, there's a 4K number, which in our case is about 50%. Lauren says it should play the same sequence next season. I mean, yes, if we've sold non-refundable season tickets, it should be. But I think the question would be whether we sell non-refundables or not, based on what anyone thinks about COVID and the impact of it, which, like everyone else in sports, events, theatre and everything else, the honest answer is we don't know yet what plans would be in place for next season. But that's clearly something over the next couple of months, vaccination programme rolling out, seeing how this lifting of restriction goes and should look at. But yeah, clearly, the more you have committed up front, non-refundable season tickets to benches, the nearer the front of that list you would be. I also think, obviously, beyond that, there were, if restrictions are still in on a more dramatic level that lifts it, that caps it more on a game-by-game basis, I do think you want to try and make sure that everyone can go at some point. So I'd be awkward. I would like to think there's an idea of essentially, if to some extent, lots of people don't get to go 10 times before someone gets to go once, if they've got some level of season ticket or whatever else. But again, hopefully, these aren't things we have to. We have to get there. Yeah, exactly. Non-refundable season tickets. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat at the same time. Would be relevant if the restrictions still exist. Get your vaccines. Everyone says, Lauren, it might be acceptable for attendance. I mean, the government haven't even decided there's a vaccine passport possible. Around all of those points, the club will come up with something as fair as they can. I'm sure they will, and obviously the trust would support them in that. That was the debenture question. Niall, do you want to talk a little bit about the volunteer stuff that's been going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, this is another really key element that a few of us stood for and wanted to push forward. So we're obviously trying to look at the fans and say, right, actually, this is we're a skill set. Everybody represents a different skill set. Everybody's got something else they can offer to the club. And I think that's where we're totally different to everybody else. So what we're trying to do is encourage a big step forward in volunteering. So we ran the survey that came back and it was really positive. Lots of really good stuff came out of that. We've then done a needs analysis. So we've spoken to all the senior managers within the club, but also within loads of other organisations associated with the club. So it includes obviously the foundation, it includes DLAG, it includes the academy, it included like all different elements. And we've got loads of feedback through, and that's where the basis of the needs survey came through. So you'd have seen that whole long list of all the things and skills that were identified. And that's been really, really key. So the one problem with that is all of you very annoying fans, loads of you responded, which is really awkward because it meant we've now got to shed loads of data and we've now got to process it, which is very frustrating, but actually brilliant, obviously. So we're now looking at starting to match those skills to positions within the club and how we can actually do that. And it's been a real revelation because we were after things like the club wanted nutritionists. We had something like 12 nutritionists on there. We asked for lawyers. We had 28 lawyers, or an accountant. We asked for this. And these are all really
more lawyers than anyone wants, surely. Come on.
What?
No one wants 28 lawyers at the same time. Come on.
Well, there were lots of, but it's about having specialist lawyers. You know this, Charlie. But it's been really interesting to get all these different things coming through and realising that we all have something to offer to the club and we can all start filling in these gaps. And for us, what it is about trying to be the very best in every single element that we operate in. And that means not only you as fans stepping forward and helping using the skill sets you have, but also identifying networks that you may operate in that we can also use to get us to be the best in every element. And that's been really exciting to see. And we're getting those results through and pairing up all of those sort of stuff. I'm leading so we split this up into segments. There's match day, community, football and professional. And I'm leading the professional volunteers. And that is the lawyers. However much you might not want lawyers and accountants, or just estate agents there as well, and journalists and all the other like professions like that. And it's now trying to match those up And where possible, things like web developers and designers, having those people that would work across all the elements, so we actually get a level of consistency across the foundation and the academy and the ladies and girls section and all that sort of stuff. So we have this whole ethos going across every element. I think that's really exciting, because we're going to become not just a fans club in like, you know, kind of spoken, we're going to be a fans club in reality. It's going to be every element of us. It's going to be, we want it to be a situation where you look at yourself and go, what can I offer to my club? How can I help my club? It's no longer passive. It's about being really positive and making an actual fundamental difference to the success of the club that you followed, and really being involved in it. And obviously, you don't, not everybody has to do that, but the fact that we had such a positive response, I think we're moving in a brand new direction. And it's, let's see, it might all, hopefully it won't all fall apart in its face, but we've tried to put a really good central management team in the middle of it all and like developing it all. And I think we're going to see a huge number of opportunities coming forward in the next few weeks, and it's going to be really exciting. So I think everybody should be looking at themselves going, well, what can I do? And you know, you can email people, you can email me as one of the people, and Zab again as two people that are kind of right in the centre of that, to get yourself, if you haven't taken part in that survey, to get yourself registered into that system. We'll be operating there's a proper IT system in place that will be helping us match people to roles. It's all being put in place now. I think it's really exciting. And I think come the start of next season, we could be looking at things like people welcoming Don's makers, they're called, of welcoming people as they come into the brand. You could be looking at, you know, that whole kind of different community atmosphere that's coming from all of that. I'm too excited by all this, Charlie.
No, not at all. It's great. It's fantastic. I think it's been very inspiring to see. I mean, obviously from the last, I only coughed at Don's makers, Niall. I didn't cough at your enthusiasm. Don's makers hasn't entirely been chosen as a term.
No, so, and I'm talking about the kind of people that welcome you to the ground, like the games makers that they had at the Olympics.
I think it's been genuinely inspiring to see. Obviously, yeah, exactly, Ian. That's kind of the connotation I think it has as well. But making Don, I think
one of those two, by the way, Ian.
We proved again, I think, as a fan base and as a club over the last 15 months, where our amazing strengths are. And I think I've said this in a couple of interviews and other things. But I also think what pays great testimony to the strength of our club is that we went very quickly from a pretty fractious Don's Trust meeting 15 months ago, when we were all discussing this financial shortfall and plans that some of us quite vehemently disagreed with, and yet within a week of that relatively fractious meeting, there was a group of us all working to make sure things happened. And that did include, in particular, a large amount of hours put in by Mark Davis, who was the Don Trustee at the time, and even more so Ed Leake, who put absolutely hours and hours and hours into making sure the bond could be up and running. So I think we're very, very good at a fan base of putting together, and in a way we always pull together best when there's a massive crisis going on, and we don't always pull together as well when there isn't one. And I think what DLAG then proved. Is how well that volunteering ethos can be pulled together. And obviously there was a thing today I should mention actually, that they Siobhan McDonough, they've been nominated for yet another award. I think that's about 5 or 6 awards. I think obviously everything they've done has been incredible. Our finest hour, I think, Ian, I think very much a joint effort. So I think kind of in a way what Niall's been doing here, Niall in particular, Niall and Hannah and Rick and the team on that, I've had a very sort of tangential involvement on the marketing side, but I think what they're trying to do there, well, that sounds very patronising. What they are doing there is hopefully bringing together not just that great volunteer enthusiasm, but providing a framework so that all of that enthusiasm and that output can be harnessed, because it is one of our biggest strengths as a club. And we've always worked very, very well together, but it's really trying to make sure we could do that in a more organised way when there isn't necessarily a massive crisis next week. How can we harness all of that enthusiasm and input that we can all give on an ongoing basis? So if you take nothing else away from this hour, I think engagement with the strategy review and then being involved in that are two really brilliant ways we can all work together. And certainly on the Don's Trust side, we in theory we were supposed to have one meeting a month on the Don's Trust. Obviously, it's been a lot more. It's been a lot more than that, because there are various working groups on these things. There's other things that have been set up, things that are going on, but it's been genuinely inspiring to see how many people come together, and then each of the groups, you know, then speaks to other people. So without trying very hard, there are, you know, 400, 500 people already working on stuff, which is brilliant. And obviously that's hopefully what we all want to look and keep doing. So do look out for the other volunteer stuff and try and get engaged with that. So on which note, looking at a couple of other questions there, Les Barron again says, what, if anything, are the DTB doing to recruit more members, and could free membership for volunteers be fair reward for their work? Good question. In the first, so to take that in reverse order, free membership is tricky because obviously it comes with voting rights, and you need to make sure that the voting rights are allocated equally. I believe before I started on the board, the question was being looked at yet again about having it as an opt-in on season tickets, which I personally strongly feel is an excellent idea. Obviously, the more vibrant the Dons Trust community is, the more vibrant the Dons Trust is, the more people engaged with the elections, the more people are engaged with what's going on at the club, is a good thing. So the Trust Board are trying to encourage that. That's very important. I'm not sure specifically free membership for volunteers quite works for me, but you know, it's something that could be fit into that. And then, well, sorry, James had said yes. I wasn't sure if I could commit to that, but yes, the opt-in should be happening this year. I feel very strongly, I think this trust board all feel very strongly that you should encounter the trust when you encounter the club, especially now we're back home, a new home, back in Merton. You know, when you come to AFC Wimbledon, you come to AFC Wimbledon owned by the Dons Trust. The brands should be indivisible in marketing speak. That's one of the reasons for, you know, the rebrand, as you can currently see as well. So I think that's really important, because really you want to get to that ethos. We were also involved in, you know, putting together some of the slogans about coming back. We are back, we are home, we are Wimbledon, but also we are fans, we are owners, we are Wimbledon. There's something very different about being a Wimbledon fan, because like the Remington Steel, you know, if you like the club, you can own it. He's got a big French book so he can learn French, obviously. If he already knew it, he wouldn't need the dictionary. So absolutely, I think more engagement on that is really important. I think we can also pick up from the volunteer point to look at Peter Trigg's question, who says, sound and picture quality today's interview with Joe and Robbo was really poor. Are the club looking at ways to improve the comms and media output from the club? Yes, is the answer to that. There are plans afoot. Now the stadium fit out is well underway. I have been working on this personally with people who are involved in doing the first game. We did the first game broadcast for the Donny game, as some of you watched. We're looking at providing something similar to that on a more ongoing basis. We actually trialed last night, so the analysts have been using some different camera footage. I already mentioned that we're looking at, you know, how you could try and augment the quality of the iFollow output and the digital stuff. But what we need to do now, we've taken possession of the stadium, which was only a month ago, is to look holistically at how the digital and event and technical fit out of Plough Lane works, that it could work for on all grounds, which obviously hopefully would decrease the amount of capital expenditure and things needed, but enable us to provide a better output, so a better digital output for what we do on match days. Also looking there for the digital output that occurs at the ground, obviously the great new scoreboard, you know, the idea of you know, how you could have match footage or highlights taking place, you know, in the event space or the bars when people stay behind. And then also what you then look to do for digital and remote viewers. So yeah, there are lots of things that we're hopefully looking to do around that. There are lots of exciting things we hopefully can do with that as well, where we can, you know, again, you know, be on the front foot of looking at some of the new things that we can do with the technology and things that's available. One of my kind of bugbears or slight obsessions, having streamed quite a few live events as a company this year, is potentially looking at the idea that we should be able to have things where you can show the goals after the game in the bar, but you could also crowdsource reaction, literally crowdsource, you know, reaction from the crowd of what happened as that went in, and people's kind of phone footage and things like that, which would drive greater engagement. So yeah, absolutely, Peter, it's definitely something that the club and we as the trust are looking at. Your final question, who's managing the pub? Will this be in-house or an external company? That's an FCB question. I don't know the answer to that operationally. I'm going to have to defer and pass that one on to the club, just so you don't think I've ignored it. We have one other pre-recorded question. We've got another 10 minutes. So loud and proud, isn't it? I believe that's what Ian's just written in his French over there. If anyone has any more questions they'd like to put into the Q&A. Niall, do you want to also maybe mention a little bit? Niall, on top of everything else that he's already been doing, has also been our man with the FSA. And obviously there are interesting campaigning angles going on. So do you want to have a little mention of that, Niall?
Yeah, sure. This is came out of the governance review. So we were talking when the strategic review, when we were first looking at that, I spoke to a load of people about what they consider to be like the ambassadorial strand. That's a bit looking at how does AFC Wimbledon see itself on a kind of more national level, and where do we position ourselves, and what would that look like? So I asked lots of people, I asked lots of experts within the game. I asked the FSA, I asked sports journalists, I asked lots of other kind of fans that I know, about 20, 25 people I spoke to about it. And all of them came back and said, you've got to sort out the governance of British football. And that came back absolutely like as one of the biggest things. So I started speaking to the FSA, and the FSA, that's the Football Supporters Association, are doing this brilliant campaign called Sustain the Game, which is, you know, fantastic. It's very fans led. It's all about supporters' trust and how they can campaign and lobby parliamentarians and the EFL to change the governance and make it fairer. So actually look at parachute payments, look at kind of transparency and all those sort of issues, which is all great and really good stuff. And we're backing that as much as we can. But we had a big conversation with FSA, and the FSA said to us quite categorically that one of the big issues is that there's no central lobby from football clubs. They're actually looking to pressurise that at the moment. You've got Bernstein and Neville are doing a kind of PR exercise. You've got the FSA are looking at supporters, but there's not football clubs doing that. And they've approached us and talked to us quite a lot about what can we do and how can we position ourselves in that. And they're very keen to get us networking with the more progressive football clubs in the EFL to start lobbying to try and make change. And you know, that's process is literally starting now. It's really exciting. So it's bringing us in contact with obviously the other fan zone clubs. So us, Newport and Exeter, are having early conversations, all chaired by the FSA, which is brilliant. And then also outreaching to other clubs on the periphery of that, who are also more progressive, which is the likes of Lincoln, Accrington Stanley, Bristol City, actually, and Tottenham have been really helpful, actually. And looking at how we make that into a much more good, strong campaign. I think the idea ultimately is to try and get between 10 to 15 clubs to act as a lobby group collectively to try and change the EFL, make it more sustainable, make it more equitable, and to look at things like salary caps, parachute payments, all of that, which is brilliant. It's really exciting. It's really encouraging work. It does follow very much with what the FSA are doing with Sustain the Game, but from a brand new direction. And they're really keen for us and Exeter and Newport as three to lead that and to push forward on that. It's really early days in that conversation, and my big after that is, you know, we're busy looking for the experts to help with all that sort of stuff. So it's like the experts in legal, the expert in sports policy, the experts in media and PR, all these sort of people to add to that campaign. So if any of you, or if you know anybody like that, then frankly get in touch, because we want to make it be the most successful campaign that we possibly can do, and we can only do that if we have the best people around the table. And I'll say that again, it goes back to the same with the volunteering element, which we're doing. We want the best people. We want to reach out and find the best people. AFC Wimbledon is a brilliant story. We all know that. And actually, some of the people we've got people who have written consultation papers, who are like insiders on the Premier League and the EFL, that are all now part of a wider group of people looking at all of this. And that's because they love our story. They love fan zone clubs. They want to see football different. They want to see a new way of being. I don't want kind of old systems that we've got. And it's exciting. So we just need to look at that. And it's a big issue. One that came up time and time again when we were looking at it. But we're early stages, so watch this space. You know, I've got to write up a full paper for the DT board because it's so brand new, and stuff like that. So, you know, we need to get everybody kind of talking about it. Joe, I've already had a conversation with Joe about it. Joe's keen on this. He's really keen to back it and push it forward. So it's exciting, but it is new.
I think
what's that one?
It's
Independent Tribunal. Yeah, so the PFA, yeah. Go on, I'll let you start, Charlie. You can go on that if you want. I can answer that.
You let me say something libelous. No, I was going to say, I think
I can answer this.
It's a great initiative. We've been talking about this. We actually talked about this from a finance point of view. We nearly got through an hour without there being major finance related questions, and then 2 have pinged in, so I'll come back to those. It's the longest I've spent talking about Wimbledon since we started the Plough Lane Bomb without talking about finance. Yeah, the salary cap thing obviously is very much sort of a hot potato in this. There is, yeah, you are aware allegedly doesn't legally cover you, Laura. There is, I think this is a close forming. You're probably safe. But the salary cap thing is interesting because one of the things that comes out of that is that in a way the way the EFL overall is set up is almost designed to stop clubs talking together properly and effectively outside it. And I think what the FSA are doing and what, you know, the groups that Niall are talking to are doing, and as Niall said, of broadening it out to be not just, you don't have to be specifically the ones that are fully fan owned, but the ones who, you know, are of a like kind of mindset, and who aren't, you know, obviously some can be bigger, some can be smaller clubs, and as Niall said, on Lincoln Accrington, anyone who follows Andy Holt on Twitter would know that he's very much got a kind of view that is probably allied to our own on many things. The salary cap one is interesting. I think what you could say, in fairness to the PFA, is that
good luck with this, Charlie.
Is that their legal case?
No, anybody who's a libel lawyer now walk away from the room.
In fairness to the PFA, anyone who their legal case was pretty watertight, that the EFL had not followed the process it was supposed to have followed. More widely, could it turn out to be a rather Pyrrhic victory for the PFA to have won that case while endangering the future of clubs? Yeah, I think it could potentially do that. And would it be better for football in general for there to be for there to be a better system? Clearly. However, we would have to admit, do we have a slight vested interest as a club in there being a salary cap? Well, yeah, of course we do. But actually, it would just be better. It would be better for competition. It would be better for allowing clubs not to be run into the ground. We all know the issue with not having a salary cap, which is that fundamentally very little stops owners gambling now, which is brilliant while they're laughing at the teams that they're beating. But if the team then goes bust or collapses or is at serious risk of going under, as has happened with many occasions recently, again, that's a very short-term victory and a long-term defeat for their fans. And the whole pyramid is better off if everything is run more sensibly. So I think it's a hopefully a growth area.
I mean, like take the Championship.
Yeah.
I was going to say, take the Championship, right, at the moment, that is the single division with the biggest level of debt, combined debt, of any division anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You know, that is the most unsustainable division. And that is just because the system of football that we have with the parachute payments, with salary caps, basically doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's just not, with a bit of support that we've got from the Premier League that's coming through, it's making it too much of a gamble, too much of a risk. And football is not equitable at the moment, and it needs to be looked at. And when you look at the FSA sustain the game stuff, and you look at what David Bernstein is talking about and what we've been talking about with the FSA for the EFL clubs, we need to look at something quite radically different. And I'm not going to deny that it will help us, but it'll help a whole load of other clubs at the bottom end, and it will mean that the likes of what happened to Bury and Macclesfield and a whole load of other clubs that have folded, happen again.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to look at. And I think we need to be, we will speak. I know that Exeter and Lincoln have both at times picked the phone to the EFL and have tried to have these conversations, have basically been laughed out of court because they are one club.
Yeah.
And we need to come together. And like Charlie was saying, there is no incentive, there's been no kind of like really decent form for those clubs to actually group together. And this is what it's trying to do. That is very, very, very different. And if we can get that core, then we get to be in a position where we can actually deliver change that, yes, it will benefit AS Wimbledon, but that's because we're a club that's doing things right. And we shouldn't be the exception on that. We should be the norm.
Yeah,
and
totally.
That's where we need to get.
Yeah, I think that's all. I think that's all an excellent point. But again, it's stuff that the trust are working on, that we're also trying to get involved in. So we've got 3 more questions left in here. We've got one I haven't answered in advance. So some of them are picking up on the money side of it. So the other question in advance came from Colin Shergold. If anyone's ever been on Facebook, would they like to guess what Colin Shergold's question was about? Colin asks about the playing budget. Colin says, what is our playing budget this season, and where does that place us in the League One budget table the EFL provide us with? We can't really get into the full details of the playing budget. We can say it's less than it was last year. It's probably among the lowest we've had in our time in League One, but at a time when obviously other teams in the league also have lower budgets. It came in at a point when people thought there was going to be a salary cap in place, and there had been a downward pressure overall on wages as a result of that. We haven't been given a benchmark date in this year, and Joe actually said to me we might not get it at all because of how weird the year has been. But we estimate we are in the lower quartile, so we estimate we are in the bottom 8 or so. Well, that's not a quarter, is it? The bottom 6, that's a quarter. We estimate we're in the bottom 6 in terms of budget, but we believe that we won't be in the bottom 4 at the end of the season in the league table. That's a bit of an answer about that. Ian asks quite a specific question about grammar and individuals that I'm not going to get into. Yeah, probably an odd use of the possessive, but you can take that up with the directly if you want, Ian. So two more questions about money, which are actually related to each other. Peter Trigg says, what is the strategy for managing the debt? Will this be to pay off as quickly as possible or manage it over the long term? And Matt Jennings asks, how much longer will the Plough Lane bond remain open for investment? So to start with the beginning, I mean, it's like any kind of hierarchy of how you're going to structure long-term financing. And as anyone who spoke to me during the bond would know, I'm not a financier, but basically you want to obviously achieve the best long-term prospects you can, and you look to do that through all sources of funding available in the most efficient manner. Debt funding, equity funding, however else, in any kind of normal business, you'd look to provide that on an ongoing basis. So, for example, in our case, the Plough Lane bond is an excellent source of debt. The current bridging loan is a bad source of debt because the Plough Lane bond is owned to our own fans at low interest rates, and the bridging loan that we took out in order to build the stadium isn't. So the first aim would be to pay back that bridging loan and to refinance that. We have a whole refinance committee in place. Some great people have come forward, again, almost entirely drawn from the fan base, people who know far more about financing than I do, who are heading that up and are looking at all of this over not just, and again, not over a kind of, oh God, we've got an awful short-term problem, what we'll do in the next 6 months, but what do we do on a 5-year and a 10-year view? So we are about 18 months away, bit less, 14 months away now from the repayment date, the refinancing date for that initial bridging loan. So that, if you like, is the first thing that they're looking at is what are they going to replace that with, how we're going to do that. And then secondly, beyond that, there will be that first tranche of Plough Lane bond redemptions will come in pretty much 4 years from now. People who took out the first Plough Lane bonds will have seen, they've had their first redemption payment at their 1 year into their 5 years. And then after that, obviously, you have more longer term views of what you could do with debt. You've got things looking at how you might potentially look in the future to redevelop part of the stadium. I know we haven't even got in it yet, but if you're looking on a longer term view, there are potential possibilities around other kind of joint ventures the club could get involved in. There's potentially looking in the future if you looked at a training ground or things like that. And again, all of these things need to be viewed kind of holistically and put all together. So the short answer is there's no desperate need beyond that initial refinancing to pay things back right now. It's just to create a structure that means that everything is serviceable and the club is on a robust footing going forward. of course, what drives that in a really positive way are the massively increased revenue streams that we're going to have as a result of having moved into Plough Lane. Because we are going to have much greater commercial income. We're going to have the use of the 365-day event space. We're going to have what we were just talking about in terms of the digital infrastructure. Certainly in the event area, the world has changed quite dramatically in the last year, away from potentially just doing kind of, sort of conferences and weddings, and looking more at what are you going to do that's digital and hybrid. So we've got the potential to drive up greater revenue streams around that as well. Once those revenue streams are online, much cleverer people than me talk about forms of financing that involve kind of borrowing against income strips and longer term financing from people who are quite, are actually quite amenable and looking at the way that works. So I would largely defer to the refinancing committee, but what I think's tremendously exciting that we've never had before is that, we all stepped up 15 months ago because there was a massive short-term problem without which we weren't going to have a stadium. We solved that one, and what we now have are some much cleverer finance types looking at what happens on a 1-year, 5-year and 10-year view. I don't think the repayment, Lauren's just put in and said, how much is the repayment of the 5-year pound bond capital amount going to be a problem in the next 4 years? Not hugely, I believe. I think obviously one of the things there is, let's be frank, the club would very much like, some of those bondholders to roll it over. Some of whom I think before COVID hit would definitely have done so. I think I know, because we talked to people and they did it. A lot of people took out a 5-year bond with a view to it probably becoming a 10-year bond, but they wanted, as it were, the possible break clause. Clearly, some people's financial position has changed, totally understandably, because it's been one hell of a weird year. But long in advance of that happening, so 2 years back from that, you'd look to have an idea who might roll it over. So that would be the first part of it. Secondly, it's far enough away that we can be looking at how we fit that into that longer term kind of borrowing structure. So to pick up on that question, the planning bond is 100% still open at the moment, and will remain so. As the finance committee look at all of the sources of financing the club can have going forward, there's no doubt that our own fan base remains an absolutely great source of financing, and particularly through the kind of bond structure, a potentially mutually beneficial one, because there aren't that many financial products out there in return for the fans. So it can potentially be quite a nice, symbiotically beneficial relationship where fans can get a return on their money, and obviously the club can borrow more cheaply. It's the literal definition of crowdsourcing, sourcing more money from our crowd. So it would remain hopefully part of what they look to do going forward. So that would be the so that would be the aim. So it's still open at the moment. It may even be something we look to give more of a push to towards the end of the season again, but it's very much still open. And as Jane correctly points out, and again, we are aware that lots of people's financial situations have certainly changed again, but there were people who said, I don't really want the interest, can you keep it? The short answer to that is actually quite complicated. Basically, no, we can't keep it directly and waive it. If you signed up to get it, you need to be paid it. If you would like to donate it back again, that's very kind of you. But the mechanism for legal and tax reasons is that you will be paid the interest you signed up for, and you then can donate it either directly to the Dons Trust or through PayPal. And there have been news items about that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of background on what's going on. I mean, again, as I said, the Finance Committee working very hard on that. There's a new 5-year business plan being produced at the moment. A lot of the work that Niall's been doing feeds into that. I've slightly been sitting in the middle and working with both of those. Again, clearly next season we hope to have fans back in, which obviously makes that first year, that business plan look very, very different. We look to get the attendance up. So the more we get people to come and watch games, the more everyone stays behind and has a beer and they can come to games. And let's be honest, at the moment, I think we'd all be pretty excited about doing that. The stronger the position for everything else gets. So again, there's lots of work going on that behind the scenes that isn't the most visible and exciting thing, but is obviously very important. So to sign off finally, before Niall wraps up, Stuart Deacon says, are we looking at some glamour home friendlies as we're now going back to Plough Lane at the start of the season and not halfway through? I believe in Stuart's case, glamour home friendlies is code for can we play Barcelona, which I think is sadly unlikely, Stu. But very much so. I mean, the plan 100%.
Oh, I thought you were going to make the call. You're not phoning them up now.
So
sorry, everybody. Charlie's let us down.
So
to phone Barcelona up. That was going to be the end of the whole thing. The kind of big highlight. Charlie on the phone to Barcelona.
I'll just say yes, and then it's your fault for not delivering it. But very much, obviously, the plan would be with the chance to ramp up and hopefully have crowds in. Yeah, absolutely. We'd like to be doing something exciting before the start of next season. But again, you know, those famous words, not before then, and Boris and everything else would kick in first. I hope that was useful to everyone. But Niall, I'll let you sign off. And yeah, come to the next one.
Cool. I'll very quickly just say quickly on equality, diversity and inclusion. We've got that's another big bit of work that's going on. Jane leading that work group, massive session on Monday, which is going to be quite exciting new opportunities for us and how we look forward and go stuff. So that's going to be great. Because I don't do enough committees and stuff like that. You know, it's a weird evening thing. You know, some people say you might see your family. I think that's overrated. But now I'm doing that next week. So that'll be great. The next meet, the DTB, will be in March. It's not confirmed who will be on there yet. Just keep an eye on the website, social media.
Lucky dip from the board.
Yeah, really lucky dip. We're also hoping to stage a special football themed session over the next couple of weeks.
You meet the manager.
You can all kind of imagine who that might involve. I can't say anything more. It's just a special football theme. That's my brief. I'm not saying anything more. And of course, if you missed anything on this, then this session was very lucky. It will be probably one of the most successful podcasts. It will be on the ProBoards website, so do go and check in on that. Obviously, if you've got any other feedback, it's contact@thedonstrust.org. I hope you enjoyed all of that. I have. Charlie's been very informative, and I've said some words.
Thank you, Niall.
Thank you, everybody. You can get hold of us through our usual Don's Trust emails and stuff like that. So it shouldn't be a problem at all.
One day you can talk to us at games. Take care.
Yeah, exactly. We might be able to talk about that properly. That'd be good. But thank you, everybody.